Imagine winter in the Viking Age. The wind howls like a beast, snow buries the land, and daylight barely lasts a few hours. No central heating, no insulation foam, no thermostat to crank up. And yet, Viking families survived. Not just barely, they thrived in some of the harshest conditions on Earth. How? With clever, time-tested building tricks passed down through generations. These weren't just homes. They were fortresses against the cold, designed to trap warmth, block wind, and even share body heat with animals. Today, these ancient hacks are making a comeback among off-grid builders and survivalists. Because let's face it, the Vikings knew a thing or two about staying warm without electricity. Let's dive into 5 home-building secrets that helped Viking families survive brutal winters. Lessons that still hold up today. Turf roofs. When you think Viking house, you might imagine wood and stone, but the real secret weapon was turf. That's right, grass, dirt, and moss stacked thick on the roof. At first glance, it looked like the house had simply sunk into the earth, but in reality, this was one of the smartest insulation methods the Vikings had. Turf roofs worked because of their natural layering. Beneath the top layer of grass was compact soil, and under that, birch bark or wooden planks. Together, these layers kept rain out and heat in, like a giant, breathable blanket. The thick earth held warmth from the hearth and body heat, releasing it slowly even as temperatures outside plunged below freezing. Plus, turf roofs blended into the landscape. That made them harder to spot from a distance, helpful when raids or enemies were a threat. They were also surprisingly quiet, muffling the howling wind and the thud of heavy rain. And here's the wild part. Turf roofs are still used today in parts of Iceland and Scandinavia. Modern versions are even gaining popularity in eco-homes for their insulation and sustainability. If you've ever considered building an off-grid shelter or a natural home, a turf roof might be worth borrowing from the Vikings. It's rugged, efficient, and it works, even 1,000 years later. Central hearth. Step inside a Viking longhouse, and your eyes would instantly be drawn to the center, not to a table or a throne, but to a fire. The hearth wasn't just where meals were cooked, it was where life happened. This central fire pit was the beating heart of the home, providing warmth, light, and a sense of community during the darkest months of the year. Placed right in the middle of the house, the hearth allowed heat to radiate evenly throughout the space. The longhouse was built low and narrow to trap that heat, with a smoke hole in the roof to let out just enough smoke without losing all the warmth. It wasn't perfect. Vikings definitely had to live with smoky air, but it was a small price to pay for surviving sub-zero nights. Families, livestock, and even tools huddled close to the hearth. It was where stories were told, meals were shared, and clothes dried after icy days of labor. The design of the house revolved around it, literally. This idea is still used today in off-grid cabins and traditional homes. A centrally placed wood stove or fireplace can cut heating needs dramatically and keep the space cozy even in a blackout. So while the Viking hearth wasn't high-tech, it was high-impact. Simple, effective, and warm. That's survival engineering at its best. Shared space with animals. It might sound odd today, but one of the most practical Viking heating strategies had 4 legs, hooves, and probably smelled a bit like hay. That's right. Vikings often brought their animals indoors during winter, not because they loved cuddling cows, but because those animals gave off serious body heat. In many longhouses, the layout was intentional. One end for the people, the other for the livestock. A low wooden partition or a simple stone divider kept things separate, but not airtight. The warmth generated by even a few cows or sheep could raise the temperature of the entire building. Think of it as nature's central heating system. This setup also had other perks. Animals were safer from predators and theft. Their body heat kept water troughs from freezing solid. And in the harshest winters, that extra degree or two could mean the difference between survival and frostbite. Modern off-gridders and homesteaders still use this technique in cold climates. Some build barns connected directly to their homes or add shared wall insulation to soak up the warmth. It's not glamorous, it's not clean, but it worked. For Vikings trying to survive months of freezing dark, every bit of warmth mattered, and a few animals in the hallway could be a lifesaver. Wind-blocking layouts. Surviving a Viking winter wasn't just about what you wore, it was also about where you built your home. Vikings didn't plop down their houses randomly. They chose locations and layouts specifically to outsmart the wind. Most longhouses were built with their narrow ends facing the prevailing wind. This might not seem like a big deal, but when icy gusts came barreling in off the sea, a smaller surface area facing the wind meant less cold air pushing against the structure. It also helped prevent snowdrifts from piling up right at the entrance. On top of that, Viking homes were often partially dug into the earth. These semi-sunken designs created natural insulation, using the ground's steady temperature to buffer against extreme cold. Sod-covered roofs and thick turf walls added even more protection, basically nature's version of thermal paneling. Villages weren't just clusters of houses either. Buildings were often arranged in a way that let them shield each other from the worst weather. A barn, for example, could act as a windbreak for the living quarters. Today, passive solar design and wind-blocking architecture are huge in eco-housing, but the Vikings were already using these principles over 1,000 years ago, proving once again they were way ahead of their time. Double-layered walls with straw or moss. When it came to keeping the cold out, Viking builders didn't just rely on thick walls, they got smart with what they put between them. Enter one of the cleverest tricks in early home insulation: double walls stuffed with straw, moss, or animal hair. Here's how it worked. A typical Viking longhouse had an outer wall and an inner wall, often made from timber or wattle and daub. The gap between these walls wasn't wasted space. It was filled with insulating materials. Straw was common because it was plentiful after harvest season. Moss, on the other hand, was spongy, moisture-resistant, and naturally repelled bugs. Both trapped air and added a crucial barrier against the bitter cold. This setup didn't just keep things warm, it also helped regulate temperature and absorb sound. Imagine living in a single-room home with livestock, kids, and bad weather outside. Any reduction in drafts or echo was welcome. In fact, moss was such a favored material that it was even used to insulate boots, plug leaks in boats, and seal roofs. It was nature's all-purpose filler, sustainable, free, and effective. Modern eco-builders have taken notes. From straw bale construction to green roofs, these Viking-era insulation ideas have made a comeback in passive housing and off-grid cabins. So the next time you feel toasty inside a well-insulated home, thank the Vikings, they were stuffing straw in their walls long before it was cool. When we think of Vikings, we often imagine warriors, longships, and icy battles. But the real key to their survival wasn't brute strength, it was smart design. These weren't reckless raiders living in frozen misery. They were skilled builders, farmers, and problem solvers who understood the land and how to live in harmony with it. From turf-covered roofs to wind-deflecting layouts, Viking homes were masterclasses in cold-weather engineering. And the best part? These old tricks still work. In a world increasingly drawn to sustainable living and off-grid solutions, Viking wisdom feels more relevant than ever. They didn't have electricity or modern tools, but they had straw, moss, wood, and a deep understanding of what it took to keep a family warm through months of darkness. So next time you feel proud of your cozy insulated home or solar-powered cabin, remember, you're not inventing something new. You're tapping into centuries-old knowledge that once helped a Viking family survive the Arctic night.